Welcome to my GPD win video, which is definitely a normal video for this channel to have and definitely not strange. When buying this device, there were a bunch of YouTubers and people who review these things professionally that got it, and they like to talk a lot about specs. I'm really not so interested in specs. I just want to know if it plays games good and if some of the things are a scam or not, such as eGPUs, which are strange and new to me, and a lot of the videos didn't really explain whether you could get away with a 10-year-old graphics card or needed a brand new RTX 3090 to be able to play like a game on reasonable settings on this thing. So let's start with size comparisons. I've got a lot of things here to compare against. I think one of the easiest for me to compare against is the Game Boy Advance SP. And now there's reasoning behind this, because this thing looks like a tiny little bean dingus. Well, how this device felt when I first got it, it felt perfect in my hands. It felt like it was the right size for child me. So that's how this feels to me now. I have these really big hands and this thing feels perfect in my hand. And even though the Switch is a little bit smaller with the controllers detached, I find it easier to transport the GPD WIN MAX because the screen on this thing is so flimsy. So the Switch is 400 grams. If you've used a Switch for a long time, it gets to feel a little bit heavy. Because the WIN MAX has this big chunky bit down the bottom, you can rest it on your stomach and it's really quite comfortable. This is more than twice as heavy. But it's still lighter than the XPS. I'm going to mention this is a lot thicker. This is maybe 2 or 3 times as thick. There we go. So we've got 50% more weight, much thinner profile, but this thing thermal throttles a lot harder than this does too. The GPD WIN MAX often has a lot of comments saying that the keyboard is poorly designed, but when you compare it against laptops of the same size, it's quite good and it makes it very easy to type on compared to some of these other laptops. The keys are big, the number keys and symbols are a little bit strange, but it's usable. One of my favorite things about the keyboard is this last second addition of the FN-F function, which makes the machine quiet where it uses either 1 fan or 2 fans at only 30% maximum speed. I think the GPD guys use a 1080 or 2080 Ti or something to test games, and I think that's a little bit unrealistic considering how much more it costs than the base device itself. What I managed to get is this Lenovo Thunderbolt graphics dock, which has a GTX 1050 in it. It's only got 4 gigabytes of graphics RAM, but it's more than adequate for boosting the performance, emulating or playing games which are really graphics intensive. I've also got an Akitio Node box, which has got an RX480 in it. The price difference for a more powerful card and the extra size hardware for me isn't worth it, and I love the portability of the smaller dock.
indeed pass through this area.
Don't tell me it will pass through. It's already here. It's too big. It's unlike any other monster we've seen before.
Something I haven't talked about a lot yet is the comparison between the WIN MAX and the WIN 2. But one of the biggest contrasts I find is the difference in temperature and how much colder the GPD WIN MAX feels to use when you're using it in handheld mode, which for me is 90% of the time. When I was using the WIN 2, the WIN 2, even though I have the aftermarket cooling mod 2, the bigger fan, the copper one, the metal backplate SSD cover, games that use 3D like Slime Rancher or Prototype or an emulator, this thing gets really hot to the touch. I've only been playing this for about a minute, just to compare it against the WIN MAX, and this thing is already howling. It is loud and it is getting real toasty. And the WIN MAX just doesn't do this. You can play it for ages and it's still comfortable to hold. So overall, I really like this laptop. I think it's fantastic for older games. Sure, it will play newer games. I think you really do need an eGPU for that. Same as if you were using this as your dedicated main computer for productivity. The keyboard and the mouse setup just isn't suited for using it for a long time, and neither is the screen, unless you're holding it close to your face, in which case it is easy to play games on this thing for hours. The only other drawback I had buying it was the process through Indiegogo, which took a long time, and they ship a US plug with their adapter. This is not their adapter because I chucked it out. It doesn't look very safe. It's shipped with one of these, which is an export-only travel adapter plug. They don't have the isolating bits of plastic on there, and they're made from a much thinner piece of metal, so they don't actually fit in the socket properly. These are really dangerous, and I don't understand why they delay the orders just so they could include this maybe 10 cents at best piece of plastic. Apart from the ordering process, the only other complaint that I really have to nitpick on is the build quality itself. I wish the plastic felt a little less cheap, but overall, I guess that's what makes it lighter and easy to hold for a long time. So that's my GPD WIN MAX thing. I hope it might have answered some of the strange questions that I had initially. Thanks for watching.